Do you ever feel like you just can't get enough caffeine to start your day? Have you ever considered upgrading your typical boring cup of joe with something more thrilling? Now introducing Hyperspace Hummingbird. Hyperspace what? A man turned towards the camera asking. He wore purple snow goggles on his head, centered over his left ear. He crossed his arms, showing off his crop top sleeveless shirt. Hyperspace Hummingbird, the voice repeated. The first energy drink specifically engineered to give you stamina of an intergalactic star cruiser and the hyperactivity of a hummingbird on amphetamines. One sip of this exhilarating elixir and we instantly redesigned the pyramids, decoded the mysteries of quantum physics, and beat a cheetah in a foot race. All before breakfast. But does it taste good? A green space alien pondered. Good is for mundane, monogamous mortals. This stuff tastes like a meteor shower in a blender. Bright, fizzy, unpredictable, and absolutely otherworldly. I don't know if this sounds safe, the man from before added. This time it was a farther away shot, allowing his cutoffs and high tops to be seen. Safer than licking a cosmic power popsicle, the voice boomed. Although we'll definitely advise against trying that, so just take our word for it. We test our products on only the finest and fiercest lab-grown extraterrestrial amoebas. Ditch your dull old coffee routine, leave that boring partner and grab something that'll get your molecules vibrating faster than lightning. It's not just an energy drink, it's Hyperspace Hummingbird, your ticket to light-speed productivity. Feel like the hero in your very own intergalactic adventure. Mason Quinn's voice cut in. Use promo code MASON for free shipping on your first order. A cork popped. Drinks poured. Hyperspace Hummingbird. We don't do boring. A man mumbled, now available in all reputable and some not so reputable interplanetary retail outlets. Side effects may include temporary flight, levitation, and overwhelming desire to outsmart Einstein. Do not consume while operating heavy machinery or performing delicate brain surgery. Alien amoebas were not harmed during this testing. Now available at all reputable and some not interplanetary retail outlets. Yo, what's good, Masonites? Today is gonna be a good day, and I know that for a fact. Strap in, cause today, you ain't got no idea what's about to hit you. We're planning to hook you up with some savage talk on some shenanigans in the pro wrestling world, right? But man, this thing that's popped up, it's way crazier than that, like epic proportions type stuff. We got the chance of a lifetime to dig into the unknown, bruh, and spoiler, it's gonna set up a road trip on an epic journey of adventure. Alright guys, before we dive in, it's vital that I hit you up with some past knowledge. Otherwise this ain't gonna connect or hit you with the power punch of this crazy revelation. First things first, it's about time you got schooled on what the Dead Sea Scrolls are. Now, don't get it twisted. We ain't talking about some weird new snail species or something bizarre like that, bruh. Ain't got nothing to do with a zombie ocean. Ain't got nothing to do with scrolling on your iPhone. So, check this. These scrolls were found near the Dead Sea. That's where the name came from way back, bro, like 1947. So, like, most of the century ago, ain't no prank, ain't no social media stunt. Some shepherd dude stumbles across them in a cave. Yup, some real Indiana Jones shit. And bruh, these scrolls were old as shit when they found them. Almost 2,000 years old, like legit. And guess what? Most of them are like scriptures from the Bible, like papers full of mysteries and a whole bunch of stuff that can straight up rewrite history. Historians were like tripping when they found these because they're so detailed and valuable. I guess most are currently housed in Israel, but pieces of them keep showing up elsewhere. Bruh, like what? Okay, so check it out. This week, this guy, Jay Sullivan, right? Dude went ahead, slapped a picture of a Dead Sea Scroll on Reddit. Something most people have never seen before. And you're thinking like, yo, Mason, so what, bruh? Reddit's full of all sorts. Anyone could post there. But here's the kicker, my man. The plot twist, if you will. Despite their kinda lame quality and the fact that they're not super clear out of the blue, Dr. Owen Abelman, right, the leading expert on these scrolls, right? The guy who translated a bunch of them, this big brain, he pops in, he goes, hold up, this shit looks legit. Sullivan, get in touch with me, bruh. So now, you're probably wondering, like, Mason, why do I care, dude? What's that got to do with anything? Simple, answer's easy. Today, or whenever it hits your feed, your boy here is going to link up with Jay Sullivan and chat him up myself. And we've got luck on our side. We'll be the ones to peep at this mystery scroll, and you'll be there with us, so buckle up, squad. Let's get it. And cut. Dylan Holmes smiled. Dylan's brother Trevor turned off the cameras as Mason looked over at the producer. Was that good enough, Dylan? That's insanely good, Dylan said. Mason watched for a reaction betrayed these words, but found none. Okay, honestly, I don't think your followers give a fuck about the Dead Sea Scrolls or any of that shit, but I think you'll get mainstream attention just for going, but no one else can get a word out of the dude. My money's on you. Getting people to talk is like your superpower. Trevor ignored the two of them as he reached into a cooler and pulled out a hyperspace hummingbird. When he realized they were looking at him, he smiled, held out an energy drink. You want one? Mason shook his head. Fuck no, I don't drink that shit, and you probably shouldn't either. Dylan smiled. That's actually good. If your heart explodes, we all lose our jobs. Dylan smiled and stretched. How long's the flight? Dylan looked at the floor and then back at Mason. I don't know, like 6 hours? Trevor threw his hands up. Fuck, I'm bringing the whole damn cooler. I'm gonna be needing it, like legit, 100 of these bad boys. Mason's private jet passed some random city, lighting the darkness 40,000 feet below them as Trevor leaned over to Dylan. Why are we doing this? Like looking for some old people writing. Money? Jason laughed, stretching the word out. Dylan shrugged, barely looking at his brother. Sounds right. Cars, mansions, private jets don't just materialize out of nowhere, bruh. Jason added. Yeah, people care enough to watch this shit? His eyes went to the window, where the city was already disappearing from below. Dylan stared at Trevor. How long have you worked here? You know, Mason's fans would tune in if he talked about the texture of dog shit. Put that on the schedule, let's do that. Pieces of popcorn fell to the floor as he laughed. Trevor pointed to Mason. This man wants adventure. See things no one's ever seen before. He wants to go places people dream of going. Tell him about it, because they ain't ever gonna do it. He wants the selfie. Mason shook his head. Yo, you had it on point the first go-round. Let's score those clicks. Shares, rack up some sponsors. Stack that cash. Trevor high-fived him, and he sat back down. Okay, so we're all on the same page. But so, you get this red sea skull, and then what? Trevor's whole body twitched as Dylan's hand slapped him on the head. Dylan paused, emphasizing each word as he said it. It's a Dead Sea Scroll, you fuck. Like the fucking shapeshifter lizard people on Avengers? Mason adjusted in a seat. Christ, your brother is dumb as fuck, bro. For real. You sure your blood? I mean, your mother wasn't having like a little extra fun with the pool boy or some shit? Trevor's middle finger shot up, but Dylan ignored them both. We only got about 10 minutes till we start descending, so let's concentrate for a minute. Dylan pulled his phone out and scrolled through the notes. I read the rest of the comments from Dr. Owen Abelman on the Reddit page. From what he can make out in the pic, he's convinced the scroll is called Celestial Struggle, Seraph and Shadim. The fucking what? Trevor said, but no one paid any attention to him. Dylan continued. Abelman is in Michigan right now, so if all else fails, we can go there. But my contacts say this Janice Sullivan guy is still at the church, so that's where we start. We can go tonight, we can go tomorrow, whatever. Doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. Wow, still there, huh? All right. Tonight's perfect. Let's roll, figure out where the scroll's at. Trevor yawned. A night? Fuck. I mean, one of those hummingbirds. Mason stared at him. Those aren't for you, see? He picked one out of the cooler and pointed to the words, we don't do boring. I'm just playing, bruh. I need you awake tonight. Hit this. The Mason tossed him a hummingbird. Yo, 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 it's 9 in the evening and your boy Mason Quinn's posted up here in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm hearing that this guy, Jay Sullivan, has locked himself up in this church for a wild 4-day stretch, praying nonstop, no breaks, not even to hit the bathroom. I seriously don't know if my man had anything to eat. He hasn't opened his mouth to anyone, priests or staff included. Nothing but prayer comes out of this dude. But just watch. I'm going to switch up that routine. You better believe Jay Sullivan's going to do more than pray. I'm not leaving till he hands over that scroll, bro. Mason stood up and ran up the steps to the basilica. Let's fucking go! He threw open the oversized red door as Trevor followed him with the camera. Ahead in the third pew from the altar, a man knelt simultaneously shrouded in the shadows and oddly illuminated. Mason sauntered up the aisle, slightly distracted by the architectural beauty around him. Lavishly decorated pillars stretched towards the vaulting ceiling. Murals and stained glass threw bright, rich colors at the floor. Might be time to redo the crib. In a big window like that with me diving off the top rope into a can of hummingbird. He smiled, telling himself to remember and to use it on the show sometime. Mason approached the man and watched him for a second. He turned and raised both eyebrows to Trevor and Dylan. Mason looked directly into Trevor's camera and put his hands together to mock prey, along with Jay Sullivan. The trio tried not to laugh as they neared the man. Sullivan looked up at Mason momentarily. He bore an almost unholy twinkle in his gaze, resonating wicked delight. It sparkled within the ice-cold indigo irises that stared unblinking at the altar before him. Damn, I need to get that look down when I'm cutting promos on people. Mason put his hands in his pocket, one playing with the hyperspace hummingbird he had stashed in there. The popular vlogger leaned in. Mr. Sullivan, do you mind if we speak for a moment? No response came. Sullivan neither looked in Mason's direction nor stopped praying, his lips forming whispers of words and letting them disappear into the thick air around him. Mason rolled his shoulders, winked at the camera, and said, Yo, Mr. Sullivan, super stoked to meet you, bro. I was hoping that we could rap a bit about the scroll, the celestial struggle between Seraph. The man's hands unclasped and one smacked Jason's chest with lightning precision. Jason stumbled back one step. Sullivan's hands were back together as though they hadn't moved. Jason sighed. Yo, dude, don't even think about laying another hand on me. That's not the game we're in right now, right? Mason opened his phone and scrolled through his pictures. Moving on. This is the picture you loaded to Reddit. Sullivan's hand slowly turned until his blue eyes were locked on the screen. The quiet ambience of the church was abruptly shattered as the man let loose a scream of sheer terror. His voice rang out sharply, echoing within the grand cathedral like a gunshot. Birds perched on the rafters burst in a chaotic flight. A tinge of panic and genuine fear caused a chill to settle in the air. Fueled by terrified adrenaline, Jay Sullivan struck out, his knuckles connecting with Mason's flesh. The telltale sharp crack of Mason's phone against the stone floor was drowned out by Trevor and Dylan, yelling in unison. The screams bounced off the stone wall in waves of desperate, unadulterated fright. Mason grabbed the phone and shoved it into Sullivan's face, his forearm holding the other man's hand in place. I warned you, motherfucker. Now look at this, and you tell me what the fuck I want to know. Dylan leaned forward. Dylan leaned towards Trevor. Maybe edit that out. Jay Sullivan stared into the picture in front of him. A dark room with enough light to see the undecorated stone walls and modest podium on which the Seraph and Shedem scroll was centered. The rest of the room appeared empty. But it was that emptiness, not the scroll, that held Sullivan's gaze. Tears filled his eyes but did not fall. His mouth fluttered faster than ever with prayer. Mason released his grip. I just want to know where this is. Can you tell me that? Stop hitting me? Sullivan's head nodded, but his mouth never stopped praying. His right hand moved to his pocket. Careful, Mason, Dylan said. They watched as Sullivan removed a 6-inch antique skeleton key. The iron shank was worn. The 2 teeth had tiny pocks and slight discoloration from use. The rounded head had some sort of ornate engraving pattern that Mason couldn't make out. Jace held the key in front of his face, his mouth still moving with prayer. He suddenly stopped, and the world held still. Sullivan turned to Mason and uttered only, Matthew. 18:9. What? Bruh, I don't know that without as much as a flinch, J. Sullivan drove the key into the soft part of the eyelid crease at the top of his right eye. Laughter bubbled within his chest, clawing its way up his throat and out into the atmosphere around him, amidst maniacal chuckles. Sullivan pushed the key further into his eye. The clear, colorless membrane turned red as it mixed with blood. Sullivan twisted the key to the right, mutilating himself. His pupil rent splattered from the top to the bottom as the key ripped downward, a scarlet flood cascading over his angular face, riddling it with channels of blood. Undeterred by the wrenching pain, Jace brandished his blood-soaked key and brought it to the untouched eye. He prayed with an intensifying fervor, lips forming and unforming words. He locked his remaining eye on the statue of the crucifix as his fingers found the cross hanging around his own neck. His fist tightened around the cross as he pushed the key in and opened another doorway in his skull. The man knelt back down, both frightening and pitiful, drenched in blood, sweat, and pain, his chest convulsing as if it could no longer hold the torrent inside of him. The echo of his key clattered to the marble floor. It was the only sound as the three men recording him held in their screams. What the fuck was that? Trevor exclaimed finally. There had been no words, even though the three of them were alone outside the church. Money, bruh. That was money! Let's get it edited, let's get it up now. Dylan stood silently holding the side of the church. He shook his head. You can't post that. Mason sneered. I can't not post that! A guy just ripped his own eyes out, Mason. That's what I'm saying, bruh! Think of the backlash. Mason feigned crying. Think of the shares on the apology video! Mason turned from Dylan to Trevor. You got all that, right? You got that? Trevor's head shook, and it wasn't just all the hummingbirds. Trevor's hands shook, and it wasn't just all the hummingbirds he'd slammed. I mean, yeah, but I can't. Mason placed one hand on each of Trevor's shoulders and looked him in the eye. Yes, you can. Yes, we will. Dylan threw up his hands. It's too far. Yes, we came too far for this. This will be huge. Dylan's body leaned forward, and Mason braced himself for a splatter if Dylan puked, but that's not what came out. Mason, we gotta get the scroll instead, okay? Those are the streams we need, and they'd let us keep our sponsors. Mason pointed at the church. Well, old boy in there ain't talking, so now what? Dylan nodded his head. Hang on. Trevor found something. I think we do this. Mason stared at them each, his mouth hanging open, his eyes barely doing the same. And if this doesn't work, we load that. Okay, fair enough. Dylan turned to Trevor. Show him. Trevor pulled out his phone and started to scroll. When he found the pretty blonde girl with no makeup, he turned his screen so Mason could see it. Not really my type, bruh. Mason smirked. This is Jace's girlfriend, the Amish girl who broke his heart. So how's that going to help us? I'm severely doubting she has a Snapchat we can hit her up at, and if she does, he won't see it. Jace checked in at her colony when we followed her home. If he can't tell us where the scroll is, well, maybe she can. Mason reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the hyperspace hummingbird. He handed it to Trevor. Goddamn, kid, you did good. You win one of these. Yo, Masonites, check it out. We had a bit of a plot twist meeting up with Janice Sullivan, right? We probably don't need to replay that insanity, but don't you freak. My main man Trevor stepped up, got the scoop, and thinks he can track down Elizabeth Graber. You know, that Amish chick who straight up crushed Sullivan's heart and bailed on him for full-body cover-ups and church services. Well, next stop, we're heading into her world. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be right into the Amish community she dipped back to post-Rumspringa. Quick rewind for anyone not in the know. Rumspringa is that kind of Amish rite of passage where teens get a chance to experience the bright lights and chaos of everyday life in America. They get to taste and then have to choose. Keep the buzz of our world or cruise back to the peace and simplicity. Baffles me every time, but lots choose. The latter, Elizabeth included. We'll bump into her when we get there. No spoilers, guys, and in good time. All in good time. And no need to stress about them spotting us early. Ain't like they're following me on Snapchat or nothing, right? Onwards! The SUV traveled to the southern end of Highland Country, the lower edge of the Maple Syrup Trail, and somewhere in the middle of Virginia. Mason watched picturesque forests cut across his view of the Appalachians. Sugar bushes populated the area, and the occasional roadside stand offering vegetables at such low prices, Mason was tempted to pack the plane for the ride home. Trevor popped the top on another hyperspace hummingbird. Mason sighed. Dude, stop drinking those. You don't even know what's in them. Mason turned the can. Looks like filtered water, coconut water from concentrate citric acid, dipotassium phosphate. I don't mean the list on the can. I mean, you don't know what's actually in them. We're almost there. It should be just ahead, Dylan said. Yeah, I'm surprised the place even shows up in GPS, Mason grumbled. They parked on the edge of the community and walked towards the small store. Mason recorded everything as they walked. The area was evocatively simple, contrasting vastly from his usual constantly on-the-go lifestyle of tech, flashy gimmicks, and product placement. This world was pristine, unequivocally traditional, like something out of a movie his grandpa would have watched. The bare dirt roads unfurled between fields of verdant pastures. Homes constructed with raw timber and brick chimneys whispered of hearthside family gatherings. A few women came out of a large barn near the center of the back of town. The women had a soothing gentleness about them that exuded calm and serenity, each dressed in solid-colored dresses and aprons, head covering bouncing lightly with each step. A symphony of clucks, whinnies, and lowing cattle reverberated through the fresh air. Carts laden with produce lent the ambience a colorful texture, contrasting with the unpainted exteriors of the homes. Mason wanted to live stream right then while the sun perfectly lit the area, but he knew the large man lumbering toward him was going to tell him not to. And while Mason wanted the hits, he didn't want to publicize their location unless he was sure he'd recovered the scroll. The man adjusted his wide-brim hat before running a hand over each strap of his suspenders. Welcome, the man spoke kindly enough, but could not take his eyes off Mason's disheveled hair and his purple and yellow sneakers. The man smiled, pointing down. Keep your eye out for horse apples in them road. Yeah, sure. The man looked at the three of them. Look about all you wish, soak it all up. Drop by the store, snag some eats if your belly's growling. Don't fuss none if you fancy taking some photos of yourselves, but do your best to keep me and my neighbors out of them, please. Mason turned to the others and said, Turn off your phones, it's just easier. Trevor wanted to argue, but did as he was told. As the man walked away, Mason leaned in. Don't worry, we'll get the goods tonight. There's nothing here worth showcasing right now. God damn, they work hard, Trevor muttered. Dylan nodded. Way too hard. Why do that to yourself when you could be happy in a hot tub playing Rocket League or jumping on the jet to get some Chicago pizza? He smiled at the others. Mason stared at him. You mean my jet? Mason resumed scanning the area for where he thought the scroll might be kept. There was no clear-cut church like he'd expected. He'd been picturing a tall steeple with an old graveyard on the side of it. You sure it's here? Trevor pointed to a nearby building with a hand-painted market sign. Has to be. That's where Sullivan checked in. As Mason entered the Amish market, it felt like he'd taken yet another step back in time. A pot-bellied stove stood in the middle of the small store. In the winter, it would have many people gathered around it, sharing stories and staying warm. The quality of each item astonished Mason, as did the relatively low numbers handwritten on the price label. A courteous man in black hat and gray shirt welcomed them and asked if it was their first time in an Amish market. When the boys confirmed, the man proceeded to tell them about everything from quilts to canned goods to handcrafted furniture. Yo, get his business card. We gotta order some of this from the crib. Trevor scanned the high-quality handcrafted rockers, bookcases, tables, desks, and even bedroom sets. Some pieces featured minimalist designs with natural finishes. I want it all. Trevor looked the man in the eye. Y'all take credit cards? The boys walked out with maple syrup, trinkets, jams, candy, and pies. Let's take it back to the car and go look around a bit more, Mason said. Just then a young woman approached them. She wore her sun-kissed blonde hair and a practical bun hidden underneath a stark, unadorned white cap. Elizabeth Graber looked different than she had in the Facebook post that Jay Sullivan made. But it was her just the same. Before Mason could say anything, Elizabeth glanced around and said, I know who you are. They don't. You need to leave. Today. Let this go. The three climbed into the SUV, chowing down on some of the food they'd bought. Between bites, Mason said, No, I get it, but it's not worth getting into it with her, bro. We're coming back tonight either way, so why waste the energy? Dylan made eye contact with Mason through the rear view. So, what's the plan? Drive up maybe a mile, hoof it back after dark? Anyone know what time they go to bed? Gotta be early, right? I'd say if we're back at 11, they'll be out. Dylan shrugged. 11? Trevor repeated. Shit, I need to drink like 8 more hummingbirds. Such a fucking pussy, Jason mumbled. Let's shoot for 10 so your idiot brother here could stay awake. And they started to pull out. Mason caught Elizabeth watching from a distance. She was near the biggest barn on the property. Why do you think that barn is so much bigger? That's not a barn, Dylan said. The words were muffled over the slice of friendship bread he was chewing. That's a church. You know, some communities don't have one. They just go house to house each. Mason dramatically shook his head. I'm very proud that you learned so much for this. Great work. But holy fucking shit, the church? I was looking for the church. That's the only place it would be, man. That's where we're going tonight. He pulled out his phone and hit record. So we're pretending to duck out, but I ain't stepping off. We got the scoop, no doubt. I bet it's hiding in the church. And yo, shit's about to get real. He took a bite of his second sugar cookie. Oh man, these cookies are absolute fire. If you ever find yourself around these parts, just like be sure to grab a bite. Ain't nobody sponsoring this shout out. They're just damn good. Catch you in a bit. I'm about to grab that scroll. You all are in it for the ride. The soft glow of the moon provided just enough light for the three men as they quietly crept along the outskirts of the Amish settlement. It was only now that Mason realized they should have brought darker clothes to blend in more. What do we do if we see a guard? Trevor asked. Mason glared as he surveyed his friend. You think the Amish have guards? Like a fucking dude in a tower ready to shoot you in the back with a bow and arrow? They're all asleep. Trevor yawned. I'll say asleep. Oh, shit again. Dylan waved them towards the former barn that now served as a church. As they reached it, Mason added, Yo, I'll tell you what we do if we run into anybody. Just pull up some Pornhub, crank the volume. They don't know what hit them. Let's just run. Dylan smiled. Trevor's probably got 18 tabs open already, so he'll be in charge of that. Very funny assholes, Trevor muttered, his frazzled hair reflecting his exhaustion, his eyes struggling to stay open. We picking this door or what? Mason reached forward and turned the knob. The doors groaned under the strain of opening. Lucky they lock shit around here. Once inside, the trio turned on their phones as flashlights. The room was a study in a sparse arrangement of only what was needed. Hardwood planks stretched underfoot, creaking lightly in spots worn by countless generations. Solid oak benches served as pews, void of decorations or padding, the grain darkened by age. It was nothing like any church the group had ever seen, and the direct opposite of the cathedral they'd been to the day before. There was no stained glass, but the large windows allowed enough moonlight in for the simple lectern to be seen. Video's on. We're not messing this up. Each of the three began recording, Mason and Dylan on their phones, Trevor on his usual camera. Mason ran up to it, expecting to find the scroll just laid out waiting for him. Of course, it was not. The Bible was on display instead, open to 2 Corinthians 4. Mason ignored it and kept looking for the scroll. Dylan began videoing and waving to him. Mason quietly said, Yo, We're posted up in this wild Amish church. Or maybe the opposite of wild. We're on a mission to hunt down that scroll. You already know it's going to be stashed here somewhere, but your boy's striking out right now. No sightings yet. Trevor yawned again. Hey, cut that yawning, Trev. Perk up. I'll hook you up with... Mason pulled out an energy drink from his sweat pocket. My last hummingbird. He turned it towards the camera, making sure the logo was visible. It's our official drink because hyperspace hummingbird don't do boring. Mason cut his feed and handed the drink to Trevor. Wake the fuck up. As Trevor cracked the hummingbird open, Dylan shined his flashlight near the back corner of the room. Stairs! Dylan kept his hand on the stone wall as the group went down the stairs. Musty, earthy aromas rode the dusty air as particles danced in the light cast by their phones. The trio found themselves in a large underground area, but the heavy darkness betrayed where the boundaries of the room were. Mason's eyes locked on the scroll not 10 feet in front of him. Vindication swept over him. He laid a fist over his heart and threw back his head. You feel that, boys? Victory's here! They set up around him, trying to get good shots. But the darkness in the room seemed to swallow any light they shone. Nothing lit the way Trevor knew it should. Mason was busy running his hands over the celestial struggle, Seraph and Shadim, tracing the columns of ancient text with his fingers. Trying to figure out what it means? Dylan said. Money. Mason smiled. Means money. Means clicks, shares, sponsors, cash. He pushed too hard on the side of the hand-carved mahogany podium, almost knocking it over. Shit! Shaken like I had 50 hummingbirds like this motherfucker. He shook it off and posed in front of the scroll. Live stream almost ready? No bars, Dylan said. Mason checked his own phone. Same issue. All right. Everybody film it so we can make sure we got it. We'll piece it together, get it online tomorrow morning. Dylan gave him the signal, and Mason's persona came to life. Check this out! We got the scroll. Legit, dudes. Straight out of the Dead Sea. This piece might just predate Jesus himself, but who knows? I'm lost when it comes to decoding it. Maybe someone of you savages out there can do it and give us a breakdown. Let me get in closer. Mason focused the camera on the parchment, but it wasn't coming up well on the minuscule light. Guys, throw some light over here. Trevor walked closer, training his phone's flashlight directly on the scroll. He watched the phone's display as he sipped a hummingbird with his free hand. Although the scroll shone brighter, the light still didn't seem to illuminate anything past it, as the area ahead of him stayed dark. And then he saw something. Mere feet from the base of the podium, laid out in brilliant white salt, was an intricate array of swirling symbols and lines. Multiple circles overlapping one another, creating a complex cosmograph. Trevor's jaw clenched, his heartbeat thrashing in his ears. The more he raised his phone, the more clearly the outline of a gigantic spectral figure came into focus. It moved. Trevor screamed. The others looked just in time to see the hyperspace hummingbird fall from Trevor's hand and hit the floor, liquid pouring from the can into the darkness. Shit! Yo, what the fuck? Dylan and Mason each stared in disbelief as the creature. Mason yelled, "Somebody better be fucking filming this!" The monstrosity shifted, pulsing, crackles of staticky white lightning popping as two massive wings unfurled from its midsection. They stretched outward as far as they could in the confines of the trap before curling back in. The liquid collided with the salt, the powder absorbing it almost instantly, the carbonation causing a bubbling reaction as the powder clumped in a semi-solid state, breaking the outer circle. Trevor pointed at the masses of salt and yelled, "That's not normal! Oh, what the hell is that?" "I told you not to drink them," Trevor growled. "You're the one pushing them all the time." "Yeah, but not to you. You're my friend." "Can we please focus?" Dylan yelled. He took a step forward. Just as the creature stretched upwards, eyes incandescent, a 2-minute account surveyed the room the creature found itself in, each pupil dilated with timeless knowledge. Wings unfolded from around the being's legs, then from its face. Hundreds of luminous tendrils sprouted from its back. All 6 wings stretched up and outward as the energy drink began to eat at the inner salt circle. Finally free, the seraphim stood in all its glory. pausing before the trio for only the briefest of moments. Mason took 2 steps back, trying to get a better shot on his phone, only to realize the creature wasn't showing up on the display. Oh, what the fuck? As Mason looked up, wings as sharp as diamond edges whipped forth in a lethal flourish. The bodies of his supposed friends thumped lifelessly to the floor. A fleeting spray of blood landed shortly after. Mason slumped back, his eyes watered as a primal scream lodged itself in his throat. He turned to go up the stairs, but found himself face to face with Benioff Eberson, the bishop of the church. Mason didn't know how, but he had suddenly knew the man's name and position when they'd never spoke. "What did you do?" Mason grabbed the man's suspenders, pleading, staring into the man's soul. "I'll pay you anything you want. Just get me the fuck out of here." Benel stared past Mason, his eyes locked on the divine being, rising to its full height, the creature's lowest set of wings dragging across the floor, pushing the salt around and erasing the remnants of the magic circle that once confined it. All 6 wings flapped at once, sending small electrical currents coursing through the dense, dust-filled air. The seraphim pushed against the ceiling as the basement had grown too small to contain it. Mason looked into Benioff Eberson, screaming, Is that a fucking demon?" "Demon? Angel? One or the other. The seraph or Shadem. It doesn't matter. If one exists, the other exists. God exists. Looking upon it, you know the truth." Knowledge flooded Mason's mind. He suddenly understood things he'd never considered. That's how you baptize your community. That's how you get them to stay. You show them the truth. When you've seen with your own eyes, it's near about impossible to deny is real. You killed my friends. It'll do for all of us. The hour's upon us. Benioff retreated up the stairs. Mason looked back at the monster. What hour? An explosion of pure light illuminated every crevice, crack, and burrow. A wave of sudden self-awareness rolled through Mason as more knowledge drove itself into his brain. Every imperfection he had, every vulnerability glowed in his mind as ignorance turned into understanding, shame, and guilt. The ceiling ripped with the creature's surge and shattered into a billion wooden splinters as it escaped, leaving Mason alone with the pain of his thoughts. Mason reached the top of the stairs and ran out of the church just in time to see it happen. He dropped his phone along the way, but that no longer mattered to him. A split second of vacuum-like silence preceded an ear-shattering blast, rupturing the calm and ripping apart the solid beams of the barn. The members of the community emerged from their homes, gathering on the rubble-strewn field of splinters and shards, lost in bewilderment, gasps, and muted exclamations. They congregated in their night garments, unable to pull their gaze from the blazing body above. The end came very quickly for most. The being lowered to the ground, leveling itself with the community before spreading its great wings and slicing at the people directly in front of it. The devastating gale bore not death, but a curious grace. One by one, each villager answered a silent call, drawn towards the radiant being as though lured by invisible threads. There was no pandemonium, no fear, only piety and acceptance as the angel touched every true believer. They departed this realm in soft tendrils of golden light. Men, women, children lifted from their positions in neat rows like sheaves of grain harvested by an unseen scythe. Elizabeth Graber stood next to Mason, but neither looked at the other as the angel took its place before them. Beneath Elizabeth's capped bonnet, strands of golden hair wrestled in the cool breeze as she continued to stare upon the heavenly apparition. Her cheeks burned rosy with anticipation and uncertainty as she clutched at the front of her ham-made frock. The seraphim's multitude of luminescent eyes locked onto hers, radiating an omnipotent comprehension. Its lower wings folded delicately, obscuring its lower half, another pair covering its face, unyielding sadness surging through Elizabeth's veins as tears spilled over her smooth cheeks. Not out of the devastation being left behind, but out of the sheer, overwhelming feeling of having borne witness to a heavenly grace, Finally, the seraphim unfolded its wings to reveal its towering majesty once more. And with one powerful stroke, it shot into the sky. She turned to Mason and only said, "It was my pride what done it." But he understood. He saw everything now. How she'd put her own desires above the church, even when she'd seen the truth. Jay Sullivan had followed, begging her to leave with him. She begged for him to stay. When he couldn't, Elizabeth violated the church and took Jace to the basement. She forced the truth upon him with no regard for the consequences, hoping it would make him stay. He'd used his phone to take pictures of the creature, inadvertently photographing the scroll instead. And then he ran and never looked back for her. She'd given up everything for him. I can only spend my life trying to repent. I'll never be forgiven, but it's all I can do. Elizabeth pushed past Mason, leaving him out there alone as she entered the piece of the barn that still stood. She sat on a bench and began to pray. Mason could see it. He knew she'd never be forgiven. Worse, he could see that whatever minuscule chance Elizabeth Graber had at redemption was exponentially more than he'd ever have. Nothing could save him, not the private jet, not the mansion. All the likes, shares, and comments in the world were meaningless, as was everything in his bank account. He surveyed the empty settlement and what was left of the people who had nothing and still couldn't take what they had with them. What hope was there for Mason Quinn? What he wanted more than anything was the feeling that disappeared, right as the angel did, the absence of which was absolute hell. He needed it back. That feeling was the only thing that mattered, and even though he now saw that he would never get it back, he would try. He was Mason fucking Quinn. He could do anything if he tried hard enough. Mason slid onto the makeshift pew next to Elizabeth and began to pray. Did you like that story? It's part of a new charity anthology called Shadows in the Stacks. The book features stories from 21 of horror's brightest up-and-coming authors, as well as New York Times, as they celebrate literary themes being banned from libraries across America. Proceeds from the book will be donated to the library's foundation, SD, where it will be invested in children's reading and adult literacy programs. If you want to fight back against censorship and against book bans, then pre-order Shadows in the Stacks today. And, speaking of libraries, on May 29th, you can catch me at San Diego Central Library for a very special, one-night-only Creepypasta Storytime. This is a charity event to raise money for Library Foundation SD, so tickets are already available on Eventbrite, but they are selling fast. So, you can find more at spirited-givings.com, like you see on your screen now. And sweet dreams. And finally, as always, I want to thank everybody who is on my Patreon list. Especially, I want to give a huge thank you to Triller Tier Jackal, Ryan Figueroa, Ethan Leon, Polaris Prospect X, Lake Rattler, Viceroy Sword, Disciple, Delaney Melton, Strategy, Wolf, Jameson, John G. Luna, SullyMan, Juan Mendoza, Rock Bottom Smasher, Elias Nahero, Brandon Mendoza, Sneck, Brimstone Pendulum, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Victoria Schwartz, Victoria Miles, Aaron, Emma, Kemza, Brenna Crow, Elijah Munson, LaQueda Canizales, MrCreepyPasta Peebus Pleaser, Travis, Smiley Psychotic, Richard Sundell, Huda B, Dante Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, M, Jettis Pet, VerbalHorror, Kearns, Mike, himbojerry, CrusaderChocobo, Corbin Dallas, Estebeam, Our Minute Sex Time, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Mr. Marcus Splits, Dirt Diver 030, Voice of Sand, Psychomel, Melted Lake, Tolly Sue, Cronut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hazy Nephew, Tommy Wall, Tommy Walters, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Corey X Kenshin, Diana Kraus, Jordan Humble, a man of many names, and every single one of you that's down there in the description, every single one of you that is able to give even $1, man, I cannot thank you all enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To all of you out there, have a wonderful evening and sweet dreams.